Hey everyone, I'm Allison Morris. You are watching NBC News Now. Here's what's happening.
We believe it is way too soon, that this was a premature release of guidelines, and we would actually like the CDC to retract those guidelines.
The nation's largest nurses union blasting the CDC's new mask guidance. Meanwhile, major businesses like Starbucks and Target now relaxing their mask mandates, while New York State is set to do the same.
Effective this Wednesday, we're going to adopt the CDC's new guidance and regulations on masks and social distancing for vaccinated people.
Right now, we need to focus on a ceasefire.
On Capitol Hill, more than 24 Senate Democrats calling for an end to the violence in the Middle East, what they're asking President Biden to do.
Okay.
We start with NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas. He's in Santa Monica, California, where Governor Newsom just tweeted about the state's mask regulations. Guad, what is in this latest guidance in California? What are they changing? What are they not changing?
So this is breaking news. We've been waiting to hear for an announcement by state authorities. Finally, Gavin Newsom has tweeted that California will not change its plan. We knew from the past that the plan was to reopen the economy June 15th, and that date remains. Gavin Newsom announcing that California will wait to June 15th to reopen its economy and to remove the mask mandate. The intention here is to give more time for Californians to get the vaccine. We know that the numbers in California are almost the same as they are nationwide. Just under 40% of the people in California have gotten the vaccine, both doses, or are fully vaccinated. And this is something that the largest nurses union in the country will agree with. We know that they have been upset with the CDC speaking against the new CDC guidelines. In fact, we're going to hear a little bit of what they had to say.
We have patients dying, and we still have nurses dying as well. And so this premature decision of the CDC in lifting this mask mandate, I think is, I would say, a reckless decision that they have made. And I sure hope that they take it back.
What concerns the nurses the most is the fact that it is voluntary compliance. And we know throughout this entire pandemic, when you have voluntary compliance, it is very hard to implement a policy. And so you have people that were naturally inclined not to wear masks that are now given free license to not wear a mask if they haven't been vaccinated, and will continue to spread the disease.
The nurses union arguing that frontline healthcare workers would be put at risk. We have just about less than 40% of the U.S. population fully vaccinated. So they want more time for more people to get the vaccine. But the guidelines have been changed by the CDC, and every day more and more states are removing the mask mandates.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we heard from the frontline workers about the CDC guidelines, but some residents and county leaders where you are don't like the governor's tweet today. What are they saying about the mask mandates there in L.A.?
Correct. One of the county supervisors had sent a letter to Gavin Newsom asking him to remove the guidelines, especially because the argument in LA County is that we've had a very advanced vaccination process. LA County has done a very good job with the vaccinations. And then, of course, the 1% positivity rate that we have in Los Angeles. And, you know, if you remember, Los Angeles at one point was the epicenter of the pandemic. The county has moved forward by implementing all of these mandates, by changing things. It was at one point very strict. So things are looking much better in the county. But just like the rest of the state, Los Angeles will have to wait to June 15th when California plans to reopen the economy and remove all of these mandates.
All right, June 15th it is, until further notice. Guad, thanks so much. To mask or not to mask, it's a big question in Georgia also today. The state never had a mask mandate. So how are local lawmakers and businesses handling this new CDC guidance? NBC News correspondent Cal Perry is outside of Publix in Atlanta with more.
Allison, you know, people here in Atlanta were caught off guard by surprise by these CDC guidelines. All the more interesting when you consider the CDC is here in Atlanta. Now, across the state of Georgia, each city really makes up its own decision, that at the request of the governor. So, for example, in Columbus or in Savannah today, you're still going to be required to wear a mask indoors. Not the case here in Atlanta. The mayor here in Atlanta saying only required when you go into city buildings. Now, as is the case across the country, we've been hearing a variety of opinions.
Yeah, fully vaccinated, but I think it's too soon to leave the mask completely. But in close-knit areas, and it's important to wear the mask.
And I'm a dental hygienist, and so I'm very mindful of health and all of that. But for me, I will not wear a mask.
Sir, thoughts? Mask mandate lifted?
I think that's a good idea, but I would wear when I go indoors because I don't know if the other people are vaccinated or not.
Now, complicating all of this, of course, is this honor system. When you look at reporting, for example, from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, they're indicating that up to a quarter of people in the state of Georgia may not want or may be unwilling to receive that vaccine. It's complicating an already complicated situation. The 8 major vaccination sites around the state are going to shut later this week. That is just because there's not the desire there to get the vaccines. Vaccines hesitancy is high here in the state of Georgia. In fact, those 8 vaccination sites starting today are only going to provide people with a second shot. So if people in the state of Georgia want to get their first shot, they're going to have to get it from a pharmacy or their doctor.
If you've gotten your COVID shot, you can now order your morning espresso shot without a mask. Starbucks lifting its mask mandate for fully vaccinated customers, along with Target, Walmart, Trader Joe's, Costco, and Publix. NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard is at a shopping center in Leesburg, Virginia. So, all right, Vaughn, you're there. You're outside Target. What's the biggest concern for shoppers there about the new mask changes? What are they saying?
You know, this is ever changing here, and that's why talking to folks on the ground, it's very evident from their own questions about can you wear a mask or can you not wear a mask? You know, hearing from Cal down in Georgia, you know, there's different jurisdictions have different policies. There's only a handful of states now that actually have statewide mask mandates, California, New Jersey, but just this afternoon, Massachusetts, New York, they lifted their statewide mandates, and there are still some local jurisdictions, counties, including here in Virginia, that do, but we're in a place where that's not the case. So that's why it comes down to the corporate heads at Target to decide whether folks can come with, if they are fully vaccinated, without a mask. And that's exactly what happened earlier today when Target announced that they were joining the likes of Costco and Walmart and other major corporations in lifting their mask requirements for folks who are fully vaccinated. The signs literally came down off the front doors of this very Target here this morning. I want to let you hear from one woman, Liz Ayer, who we met just after she shopped for the first time in a year without a mask on at this Target, as well as some other folks, though, who made their way to Home Depot, where that requirement still stands. Take a listen.
I walked in with my mask because I was hesitant, and walking through the aisle, I saw another young woman without her mask, and I said, "You're not wearing a mask." And she said, "Well, I was vaccinated, and the governor said we don't have to." And I'm like, "You're right." And I said, "We need to start seeing smiling faces." So I took my mask off and continued my shopping a little bit leery.
Are you supportive of businesses requiring masks too?
I mean, it's their business. They can do what they want. If they don't want to enforce the mask mandate, then that's on them.
Are you okay with Home Depot saying, please continue to wear masks?
I'm okay with that. Yeah. I've been fully vaccinated since January, but, you know, it's up to the stores.
Allison, that's why so much of this is literally happening in real time, these conversations happening inside the stores and out here in these American parking lots.
Yeah, it's happening everywhere right now. The conversations, Vaughn, we're all having at home about what to do, when you need your mask, when you don't. What are you hearing from companies like Home Depot? What are they saying about keeping their mask mandates in place for now?
You know, there's been pressure from, you know, one of the top unions in the country that represents more than 1 million retail and grocery workers came back with a scathing letter pushing back against the CDC's guidance, saying that essential workers are on the front lines. And when you're looking at the numbers, more than 60% of Americans are still not fully vaccinated. And so that's where that honor system type question comes into play because, Costco here behind, I actually was talking to one of the unmasked individuals who I talked to, Melissa, as she made her way out. And I said, introduced myself. I said, have you been vaccinated? And she said, no, it's my personal freedom. So however many folks are entering with masks who are vaccinated, but then there's also that population who are not vaccinated. And still, there's a ways to go in this pandemic, not only here in the country, but also globally, as scientists are trying to push back against these other variants that arise. We are still a long way from herd immunity, and that is why you see the likes of Home Depot continue to hold on to their mask mandate, as well as Kroger's and Walgreens. But you continue to see, like several states, others, including just actually this afternoon, CVS also lifted their mandate. So it seems like this is an ever-evolving thing with these corporations that we should expect to hear more of over the course of the week, Allison.
Sure. Yeah, sure is, Vaughn. All right, so what happens? You head to a shopping center like the one where you are, and you want to hit a couple of stores at once, and the requirements are different from store to store. What are the companies doing? What are the stores doing to clear up any confusion about their policies so shoppers actually know what they need to do when they walk in the door?
So everybody's got their signs on the door if it's required. At Home Depot, that was the case this morning. Literally talking to several of the gentlemen who had their masks in their hands, and the sign was still up on the door. And that's where you heard from Liz walking up to this Target there. And I'm here with Jason and Paul, my crew. And yes, we went shopping at Target and at Costco. And it was clear that the sign was gone. And we should know the requirement for masks doesn't apply to Target or Costco employees either. The woman who is checking card membership at Costco, the Costco employee, she doesn't have a mask on today, presumably per company standards because she is fully vaccinated. We should note Target still has their signs, social distancing, when you're doing the checkout lines. They're said that they still are focused on increased cleaning. But at the same time, it's becoming clear when you're looking at folks here in the Costco, about 20% of folks were unmasked. And there was one gentleman, you could see it hanging out of his shirt pocket there, ready to be put on. But at the same time here on this Monday, realizing that things are changing and that it's not necessary to put on now anymore. Allison.
So listen, Vaughn, I got to ask you. I mean, look, you guys are both reporters and shoppers today. You're living what everyone else is going through, right? So you're part of the story as well. Was it weird? Like, how did you feel going into a store and not having to wear a mask? We've been masked up so much. We've been out and about. I'm still like a little nervous about it. I'm not sure what to do. Was it weird, or were you just like living your best life mask free?
Okay, no, because I actually did wear my mask inside of both of our entire crew did too. Because it's one of those, like, we don't know, really, it just feels a little bizarre after this year. And especially, I actually reside in D.C. In D.C.'s policies are different. Mask mandates still exist in the city. And so all this weekend at restaurants, at stores, you still had to wear it. So suddenly you come into a different county, different rules. It's just, from one street to the next, it may be different here. And so I'm figuring it out, too, with the rest of the population, like you, Allison.
Look. We all are, right, Vaughn? I keep looking at my husband and going, what are we supposed to do? Is this okay? Are we doing the right thing? Like, the last thing I want to do, classic, like, only child who always wants to follow the rules. Last thing I want to do is get in trouble, violate the rules, or upset someone. And you just keep looking around wondering what you're supposed to do.
I should note that I went to a baseball game, Allison, this weekend over at Camden Yards. The Orioles playing your Yankees. Your Yankees did win, but everybody outside did not wear a mask in the stadium, which was very different than when I went to a Nationals game just a couple weeks ago and that mask mandate was in order. So baseball games are changing. The fact that the Yankees are still winning is unfortunate, but maybe that will change come summertime, my friend.
Vaughn, that was unkind. I was about to say, if you brought the Yankees some luck, because we haven't been winning nearly as much as I'd hoped this season, if you brought those guys some luck, maybe we need to have you up to New York to go to a game and see if we can get a couple wins. You have to change that attitude first.
It's about time we make it to a game together, my friend. I don't know if the attitude will change, though.
Vaughn, thanks to you and your crew for all of your great reporting. We appreciate you guys. It is time to check in with NBC News Now correspondent Simone Boyce. She has the latest headlines from NBCnews.com. Hi, Simone.
Hey, Allison, we're going to start with some good news on the vaccine front. Drug makers Sanofi and GlaxoSmithKline say they have promising results for their vaccine's phase 2 trials. It caused strong immune responses in all adult age groups, and they're aiming to get regulatory approval before the end of 2021. But COVID is still rearing its ugly head because the World Economic Forum is canceling its summer meeting in Singapore, citing COVID-19 concerns. The meeting will instead take place in the first half of 2022, but the final location and dates are not confirmed just yet. Well, police and other law enforcement are banned from marching in New York City's Pride Parade until at least 2025. The event's organizers announcing this weekend they'll also try to keep on-duty officers at least a block away. They say they want to increase the presence of community-based security and first responders. And a wildfire in southern New Jersey burning through more than 1,000 acres in less than a day. Firefighters containing about 40% of the fire. Luckily, no buildings have been damaged and no injuries have been reported, but the smoke will likely be visible for days. That's all I got for right now, Allison, but I'll see you in just a bit.
All right, Simone, see you next hour. The Supreme Court saying today that it will take up a major Mississippi abortion case. Let's get right to NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams. Pete, you call this Mississippi abortion case a very big deal. Tell us about it.
Well, here's why it's a very big deal. The core holding of Roe v. Wade, which the Supreme Court has repeatedly reaffirmed over nearly 5 decades, is that states cannot flat out ban abortion before the fetus is viable. That's considered to be about 23 weeks. States can restrict abortion in that pre-viability period, provided that their restrictions are not an undue burden. So that's the essence of what the Supreme Court has said about states' restrictions on abortion. This Mississippi law is a direct head-on challenge to that because it would ban abortions in the state, virtually all of them, with very few exceptions, after only 15 weeks. And so now the fact that the Supreme Court has agreed to relook at that issue, that's why this is such a big deal.
All right, so Pete, they are going to look at this come fall. What else do we know about the scheduling here?
We don't know exactly when it'll be argued. The case will be heard maybe late October, maybe early November, not quite clear. We don't have the calendar that far out in advance. And then it'll be, of course, several more months before the decision comes out. So we may not know the decision in this case for, well, a year or maybe a little more than a year. And by the way, for now, this Mississippi law remains on hold. It was struck down by the lower courts, who said that it was a direct violation of the core holdings of Roe v. Wade and therefore was unconstitutional. So that's the big test here.
All right, a big test indeed coming up in the next, I guess the test will come in the fall and a decision to follow. Pete Williams, thank you so much.
You bet.
The violence in Israel and Gaza showing no signs of slowing down, growing even more deadly as it stretches into week 2. Israel launched a new wave of airstrikes on the Gaza Strip this morning. The Israeli military says it was targeting tunnels that Hamas uses. At least 200 Palestinians have been killed since the fighting started, including 59 children. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has the latest.
Allison, here in Israel and in the Gaza Strip, at least now there is talk of a ceasefire. Both Israel and Hamas say they are open to discussing it, but we're not seeing any impact of it. In fact, we are expecting another long night of Israeli airstrikes against the Gaza Strip. Israel says it is destroying Hamas's military infrastructure, its tunnel network, the network that Israel says has allowed Hamas to fire thousands of rockets, more than 3,000 now, from the Gaza Strip, over the fences, over the walls, and toward Israeli towns and cities. But Israel has a capability that Hamas does not have, which allows it to continue its campaign with a great deal of confidence. Israel now has a state-of-the-art military defense system. It has been around for years, but it is now nearly perfected. It's called the Iron Dome system. And when the rockets fly toward Israeli towns and cities, the Iron Dome hits about 90%, according to Israeli military officials I've spoken to, of the rockets it targets. And the system is selective. If it sees that a rocket is heading on a trajectory that will take it into an open field or into the sea, the system conserves ammunition, but will knock down nearly all of the incoming rounds, which has kept the death toll in Israel relatively low, and it has allowed this country to continue this operation with little fear of dramatic consequences. Some of the rockets do get through. I was at a house today south of Israel where a rocket fell, and it fell indiscriminately. They are not targeted. They are just point and shoot, and it fell on an apartment building. And there are people in these apartment buildings. So Israel considers this, the world considers that an act of terrorism. You are pointing a weapon that isn't guided with the intention of killing civilians. But in Gaza, they say what they are facing is a full-on military assault. And in Gaza, there are no shelters, there is no missile defense system, and many civilians have been killed, about 200 so far, as Israel continues its campaign to, it says, to stop Hamas from firing the rockets.
Congressional Democrats calling on President Biden to act quickly and help broker a ceasefire between the Israelis and the Palestinians. NBC News national political reporter Sahil Kapoor is here with me now. Sahil, Georgia Senator Jon Ossoff leading a group of 29 senators asking for an immediate ceasefire in the Middle East. Who else is part of that group, and what do they want the president specifically to do here?
It's a broad group, Allison, of Democrats that includes moderates like Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, all the way to progressives like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Now, they call for an immediate ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinians, but there's not a specific demand for the White House on what to do. That would require essentially a stick at the end of the sentence, or else what happens? And this is a question that the White House does not appear prepared to take a firm stance on. President Biden just hours ago said he would be speaking to Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel, and he would have more to say then. It's not clear that that conversation has happened or that the White House has said much about it, but this will be one to follow.
Sahil, if you thought Liz Cheney might fade away this week after losing her leadership role in the House GOP, you were wrong, at least for now. Here she is with Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday.
When you talk about him being dangerous and the way he's leading the party, and I asked this about both McCarthy and Elise Stefanik, are they being complicit in what you consider the Trump lies?
They are, and I'm not willing to do that. I think that there are some things that have to be bigger than party, that have to be bigger than partisanship. Our oath to the Constitution is one of those.
Sahil, what is the latest with the Republicans today?
Well, Liz Cheney is clearly not going away. She has made very clear that she intends to stick around and fight for her point of view on this, which is that Republicans should not be tolerant of the former president's falsehoods and lies about the 2020 election being stolen from him. And she has said she will work to make sure he doesn't get anywhere near the Oval Office again, essentially signaling that she would try to stop him from becoming president if he were to run again in 2024, which he has the option to do. So this is an issue where the leadership of the Republican Party has decided that they don't want her within their ranks while she actively debunks and contradicts the former president. But she doesn't really care what they think at this point. She's out of leadership. She has a bigger megaphone now than she did before, and she clearly intends to use it to advance her message.
Yeah, it sure looks that way. Sahil, the House is leaving town at the end of this week. That means the clock is ticking on two big issues, police reform and infrastructure. Where is Congress on both of those bills today? If you could give us updates on each of those issues.
Sure. On police reform, President Biden had called for Congress to pass a bill by May 25th, which will be the first anniversary of the death of George Floyd. It is far from clear that they're going to even reach a deal by then, let alone Zoom legislation to the floor of the House and the Senate to get it passed. There are still some sticking points, like the parameters around qualified immunity in particular. That is still unresolved, but there appear to be good faith negotiations on that question. When it comes to infrastructure, there's a general agreement that that both parties want something like $600, $800 billion on hard infrastructure, things like roads and bridges, tunnels, and that sort of thing that pay fors remain a problem. And we're getting closer and closer to an informal Memorial Day deadline by which the White House has said it wants some signs of progress. And if not, the widespread speculation is that it might start cranking up the gears for Democrats to use the budget process and bypass Republicans the way they did on COVID relief. Allison.
All right, the pressure's on. We'll see how things go with everyone in town this week. Sahil, thank you. A major bridge closure in Memphis, Tennessee, a scary reminder of how urgently we need to upgrade our crumbling bridges and roads. The I-40 bridge between Tennessee and Arkansas closed indefinitely after inspectors found a cracked beam. MSNBC host Yasmin Vasugian has more from Memphis.
Yeah, Allison, the bridge behind me completely shut down. The 45,000 plus cars that would normally be driving back and forth across that bridge, 1 in 4 of them trucks with goods on them, having to be redirected miles from here. It's really causing a major impact on these communities financially because of the breakdown and the cracking, I should say, literally, of this bridge. I spoke to the mayor of West Memphis, Arkansas, and also the owner of a trucking company talking about those specific impacts. Take a listen.
It's affecting it in a lot of different ways. Mainly, you have truckload that's coming in, and 2 to 3 hours could be delayed, which goes down the supply chain, and it's a major issue.
It definitely has hurt us because due to the fact that many of the residents in West Memphis works in Memphis, as well as we have a lot of businesses depending on the population from surrounding areas, from Memphis and other areas, that comes here to spend money here in the city.
I want to see a bipartisan effort behind infrastructure. Everyone says they're for infrastructure. We've had a particular problem in Memphis with our electrical infrastructure. It's aged and it needs help. So we need to invest in what we have, but local government can't afford it. So we need the help of the federal government.
And so we had some developments from the Arkansas Department of Transportation announcing earlier today that they fired an employee of the Department of Transportation saying, and I quote, failing to carry out responsibilities correctly in the years 2019 and 2020, all bridges that employee had in fact inspected, they would be re-inspected. They would also be referring the case to federal authorities to look into any criminal negligence. So some major developments there. But nonetheless, I think the real question is, will Republicans and Democrats nationwide, but also locally, come together in a bipartisan way to come up with an infrastructure bill that will help pay for fixing bridges like this one behind me? I spoke to Congressman Steve Cohen, and here's what he had to say about that.
I don't think he's going to get the senators from this area, Mississippi, Arkansas, or Tennessee, on those bills no matter what he does. I mean, he probably could promise to make us one of the 10, and I don't think it would make a move. We've got to pass the bill. And it'd be nice if we had some support from some of the folks in this area other than myself. But I suspect I'll be the only person from this area that votes to support it.
And so, Allison, he's not optimistic, as you heard there. I spoke to Senator Haggerty yesterday as well. He's saying essentially he wants a standalone infrastructure bill, one that just has highways, roadways, and bridges, and then they can address other things later on down the road. But as you well know, Democrats certainly wanting this more robust infrastructure bill. So it's very much a wait and see moment. But in this community suffering because of the shutdown of this major thoroughfare behind me, this bridge, and not really knowing an end in sight, not knowing when in fact it could open up. Best case scenario, a couple of weeks. Worst case scenario, a couple months.
It is time for the bottom line, our daily look at what's going on in the business world and beyond. It is Monday, and that means CNBC correspondent Rahel Solomon is here to preview the week ahead. Rahel, earnings season finally winding down. I feel like we've been saying that for a while now, but we really are nearing the end. We've got 4 big retailers reporting this week. Who are we hearing from?
I know it feels like every time we talk, I sound like a broken record. Hi, Allison. Yes, it is, though, an important week for retailers. So tomorrow we will hear from Walmart, Home Depot, and Macy's. Wednesday, Lowe's and Target report, and then Thursday, Kohl's. We expect, Allison, a lot of the same themes from last quarter. Less promotional activity, so higher prices, but costs were also higher, especially logistics and shipping. So investors will be keeping a close eye on margins and shipping costs this quarter. Allison?
Rahel, you are never a broken record. It just feels like earnings season. I don't know. This one felt like a long one.
It's been a long
I know we also have some big housing data out this week. Yeah, for sure. What's coming out when, and what should both buyers and sellers be watching for this week?
All right. Yeah, this is quite a lot of data on the housing front. So this morning we got the May reading of home builder sentiment. The reading remained unchanged in May. Anything above 50 is considered positive. It did, however, come with a warning that the cost of construction was 12% higher from a year ago. So even more affordability issues for a market, of course, historically low on inventory already. Tomorrow we'll get April housing starts. That's construction on new homes. Wednesday, we'll get the latest mortgage application figures. And then on Friday, the April existing home sales report gets released. So very busy week for our real estate reporter. Allison, look to see if housing demand has slowed at all amid, of course, higher mortgage rates slightly and also rising home prices. And as I said, again, lower inventory.
Wow. Basically, if you're selling or buying, this is the week to watch. You're going to learn everything you need to know about the housing market in the next couple of days. That's for sure. Rahel, Oatly, the vegan milk company, going public on Thursday. Vegan milk might not sound so sexy, but this brand has some major celebrity backing. A lot of people excited about this IPO.
Yeah, it may not sound sexy to a lot of people. I have to admit I was a little excited about it just because I personally love Oatly. But yes, lots of celebrities, no endorsement here, but lots of celebrities. And chances are if you've had oat milk in your Starbucks drink, well, you've probably had Oatly before because it's carried on their menu. So the company is looking to raise $1.4 billion. Could be valued at $10 billion in its debut. And yes, it's expected to go public on the NASDAQ under ticker symbol OTLY. As you said, Allison, it has quite a roster of A-list investors, including Oprah, Jay-Z, and speaking of Starbucks, former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz. Although the company's products are popular, the firm did lose $60 million last year. But Allison, as you know, it's still in its growth phases. So that's likely more so an indication of spending as it tries to continue to, branch into new products as opposed to an indicator of, sales.
Yeah, it might not be profitable, but you said it. It's really popular. I mentioned it to our senior producer who went, "Oh, I love Oatly." I mean, everybody kind of feels that way. You're not the only one. It's gotten really popular. We'll see how it does.
Yogurt?
I didn't know that.
Yes, it's like
we'll be watching the
plant-based domination. Sure.
Rahel, thank you so much. Always love seeing you on a Monday. We'll catch you next week.
Likewise. Okay.
Two major stories rocking business and media today, a merger and a breakup. AT&T turning up the dial on the streaming wars, announcing a $43 billion deal to merge Warner Media with Discovery. And the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Microsoft's board investigated Bill Gates for an alleged affair with an employee back in 2000 before he left the board last year. A Gates spokesperson saying the decision to step down was unrelated. So let's bring in NBC News senior media reporter Dylan Byers, who's got all the scoop. Dylan, let's start with the Warner Media Discovery merger. AT&T spinning off Warner Media, undoing one of the biggest media acquisitions in history. Its 2016 purchase of Time Warner for $109 billion. How come?
Yeah, well, two reasons. One is AT&T never could quite crack the media game. They're a telecom giant. They made the decision to get into media a few years back. A lot of people raised questions about why they were doing it, about whether vertical integration would work. And the answer is that for AT&T, it didn't. It became more of a headache than it was worth. And we're living in a landscape now where the Warner Media assets aren't on their own enough to compete with the likes of Netflix or Disney or even Amazon now. And so if you're Discovery, you're an even smaller media company. You need scale too. And so a tie-up between Discovery and Warner Media gets you a little bit closer, not quite there, but it gets you a little bit closer to the place where you can turn that into a media business that can at least try to compete with those giants, like I said, Netflix and Disney, and try and make a real run of it. So AT&T made a mistake, I think. I think they saw a chance to finally make an exit. Discovery and Warner Media primarily are going to be legacy media plays. They've got a lot of traditional television programming, not as much on the digital front, but they're going to try and have a go of it there as well.
Look, Dylan, as the kids would say, right, it kind of makes you a player. You mentioned some of the other names in the game, Netflix, Amazon, Disney Plus, Hulu. I mean, the list goes on and on. So how will this merger affect the streaming landscape besides, making them more of a player in this game?
Yeah, well, look, I think from a consumer perspective, it doesn't affect a lot right away. I think eventually once this deal finally closes, a year or so from now, you could see Discovery Plus and HBO Max turn into one streaming service. So that's one less thing that you have to choose from when you think about your streaming subscriptions. From a business perspective, though, the ramifications are pretty significant. Basically, I think the message is very much you have sink or swim. And if you're a company like, frankly, NBC Universal, our company, right now, you got to figure out what your scale play is, too, because if you want to compete with the Netflixes, with the Disneys, you have to be a certain size. You have to have a certain content library, a certain subscriber base to really play in the game, to be a player, as you say. And that's kind of the question. And so there are a lot of sort of small fish, minnows, who are probably going to get bought up really soon. And I think basically what it suggests is that we're heading toward more consolidation in the media space. There are going to be fewer players owning more as they try to compete with those tech giants.
Right. All right, so we have to talk Bill Gates. Microsoft board members decided Gates needed to step down from the board last year as the company looked into an alleged affair with a Microsoft staffer way back in 2000. That's according to the Wall Street Journal, which spoke to people familiar with the matter. A Gates spokeswoman acknowledging that he had an affair. What else have we learned here?
Yeah, acknowledging that he had an affair, but that it didn't have any correlation or any relevance to his decision to step down from the board. Yeah. I think really the big picture, what we're learning here, Allison, is that, well, two things. One is that when you have a divorce of such high profile people, when there's so much at stake, you're going to have a lot of messy details come out, and you're going to have a lot of messy details come out that are very true and very shocking. And you're going to have things that are sort of spun as both sides try and compete with one another in the headlines. And then I think the second thing is that I think we are going to learn that despite his overwhelming generosity and philanthropy, that Bill Gates is probably a more complicated figure than I think we all knew or thought of him as, given all the extraordinary work that both he and Melinda Gates have done in terms of, healthcare, education, international global development, all of those things. These people still have personal lives, and they're probably going to include some less than savory details that we're going to learn about in light of this divorce.
Yeah, I think we've learned right from the past, Dylan, that unless it's a Gwyneth Paltrow-style conscious uncoupling, divorces can get pretty ugly, especially on this kind of a scale.
That's right.
Dylan Byers, thank you so much. Always great to have you on. Parents, check your bank accounts this summer. The Biden administration announcing today that monthly child tax credit payments will start showing up July 15th. Those payments are part of the expanded child tax credit program within the American Rescue Plan, which gives qualifying families up to $300 a month per child. NBC News White House reporter Lauren Egan joins me now. Lauren, a lot of parents rejoicing because this means more money in their pockets. Who's eligible for these monthly payments, and what should qualifying families know about these credits?
Yeah, that's right, Allison. In most parents who have kids aged 17 years and younger are going to be eligible for these benefits. Take a look at the breakdown of those benefits. If you have a child who is 6 years old and older, you're going to get up to $250 a month. Now, if your child is 5 years old and younger, that's going to be $300 per month. Now, the IRS is determining the age of children depending on how old your kid is at the end of the 2021 calendar year. So, for example, if you have a kid who turns 18 years old this year, they're not going to be eligible for that benefit. The same goes with that 6-year-old differential there. If you have a kid who's 5 years old, but they're turning 6 this year, they're going to be narrowed down to that $250 range. And now the IRS is taking a look at parents' incomes to determine who gets these benefits. The payments are going to start to narrow down depending on how much money you make, with the benefits completely phasing out for individuals who make $200,000 a year and for married couples who make $400,000 a year, Allison.
Lauren, typically child tax credits come in the form of annual tax refunds. This will be the first time they'll be distributed monthly. How will that work in year one? And what is the White House saying about the benefits of switching over to these monthly type payments?
That's right. Usually these payments come during tax season when you file your taxes in a lump sum. This is the first time that they're coming on a monthly basis. And as you noted, it's going to start July 15th. Of course, that's halfway through the year. So the second half of the payment that would have come earlier on in the year, that will be doled out when you file your taxes in the next tax season. And, you know, on a call with White House officials last night, a lot of them really stressed that they wanted to move to this monthly system because it gives parents a lot more autonomy in how they plan for their own households. I mean, this could put up to $500, even more for some parents, in their bank account every single month. And that can be really life altering for some parents rather than waiting until tax season to see these benefits come through.
Yeah. All right. We all know the stimulus check payment process wasn't so smooth. So what's the Biden administration doing to avoid some of those hiccups here?
Yeah, we all remember how chaotic that whole experience was. And the Biden administration is saying they're really trying to learn from that whole process and really streamline how they dole out these cash payments. And one of the big steps that they're taking is that the IRS is creating this online portal. And it's going to be a website where people can go and update their information. For example, if you have a kid this year and you don't think that their information is registered with the IRS and you want to make sure you're getting that payment, you can go into this portal and update your information. It's also going to be key for people who don't usually file taxes or don't have any taxable income to report. Those are the people that tend to fall through the cracks and don't usually get this kind of benefit. So it's going to be key that those people use this portal to update their information to make sure that the IRS knows how to send you your money. That portal is not live yet, Allison. It should be live within the coming weeks as we near that July 15th day.
Oh, Lauren, you have a wealth of information, and I know parents have so many questions and want to make sure they're getting that money if it's due to them. Thank you so much for walking us through how this whole process works. Only 4% of welders in this country are female, according to the American Welding Society. But 3 women in Detroit are proving glass ceilings are meant to be broken with a little firepower. NBC senior investigative correspondent Cynthia McFadden has their story.
I just like to get dirty. You know, I like having something to prove. I like being with the guys.
Tia Leonard has landed her dream job.
Are you good at it? I'm very good at what I do.
Lily Klein looks forward to punching in.
I've always enjoyed making things.
And Bailey Steele rarely gets stressed out at the office.
It's like meditation. You can just be quiet and breathe and do your thing.
This is what sparks their passion. Welding. Often seen as a man's job, these young women are torching that old glass ceiling.
On the production line, Rosie the Riveter steps in when the draftees step out.
80 years ago, there were women picking up the torch, thousands of them stepping up during World War II. But when the men returned, most departed. These 3, part of a new generation.
Only about 4% of welders right now are female. You are pioneers, all of you. When you were a kid, was this something you ever thought you might do?
God, no. I didn't think it was a woman's job because you don't see any women welders on TV or anywhere.
We talk with these trailblazers at Gannis, a custom furniture shop outside Detroit, where a lot of welding takes place. The only bathroom on the shop floor, a reminder of who mostly works in these jobs.
Do you feel that when you're first on the job, men tend to underestimate you and your abilities?
Absolutely.
Of course, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of you?
Mm-hmm. They tend to, oh, silly girl, you, or let's just keep you here.
But underestimate them at your peril. Lily makes custom furniture at this shop. Bailey is welding cells for the new county jail. And Tia helps build the elaborate ovens used to bake on car paint.
When someone hollers flash, what does that mean?
Don't look.
Don't look. Absolutely. The arc and the light from welding is very harmful.
As in, it can cause temporary blindness that can last for weeks.
I mean, it's no joke. If you don't know what you're doing, you could get really hurt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're going to have a couple battle scars. If you're a girly girl, this is not for you.
All 3 are graduates of a Detroit program called Women Who Weld, an intense training course with an amazing track record.
There's 100% completion rate and 100% employment. I don't know any place else in the country that can make that claim.
I graduated from the program on a Friday, and I started a job on Monday.
The not-for-profit program was started 7 years ago by Samantha Ferrugia. So far, 400 women have graduated and landed jobs in the industry.
It's pretty amazing to watch people in as short of a year really just transform their entire lives.
And Samantha's even earned a spot on InStyle's list of the 50 most badass women, right next to Betty White and Helen Mirren.
Most people who try welding for the first time kind of have the same feeling of power. To be able to take two pieces of metal and join them is just a really powerful feeling. It's hard to describe.
And something curious, even though America has lost more than 7 million manufacturing jobs since the late 1960s, the need for welders has grown, with salaries sometimes topping $100,000. But they caution, being a woman in a male-dominated world is not always easy.
And you are deemed fresh meat when you get there. There's not a lot of us. So you will get the catcalling. For me, I find that shutting it down right away really makes the difference.
What do you do?
Very politely, just I'm going to stop you right there. I said, I'll give you this day because I know this is new for you, but this is my job and I'm here for a reason. I don't want to hear it again.
Before I leave the door in the morning to go to work, I'm usually trying to be extremely cautious of the way that I'm presenting myself. You know, the last thing I want to do is become a distraction more than it already seems to be for a lot of people.
Because I'm a quiet person, I don't like to step on anybody's toes.
But when a man old enough to be her father made a pass,
I just had to step up and say, like, hey, don't do that, don't say that. That was the first time that I really stood up for myself, and I felt better for it at the end of the day.
To any girls in the audience who are listening to you, what would you say to them about the profession you've chosen?
Don't worry so much about how people are perceiving you. Don't let the judgment or questioning shrink you and your desire to be a part of it.
It's okay to want to be something that isn't the norm. You know, it's okay to want to be a welder. It's okay to be in a room full of men and know what you're doing.
Could more kids be held back this year because of COVID? It is a growing concern for some parents. 18 states introducing new grade school reading requirements that could leave kids behind if they didn't learn enough this year. NBC News chief education correspondent Rahema Ellis has more.
Hey, Allison, this has been an upside-down year of learning for so many students, and now some parents are worried that their children could be left behind, and it's particularly troublesome to them in a system that they say has been failing their children long before the pandemic.
What is this word?
In a year of COVID learning, Sparkle Johnson struggled with 2 full-time jobs.
You need help, Bob? It was probably one of the hardest things I've had to do.
Working overnight as a medical assistant and during the day, helping her 3 children and 6 others in a learning pod. You think the children advanced?
Children absolutely did not learn anything.
Now, this Nashville mom and thousands of parents like her in Tennessee are wondering if their children will be left behind. A new state law says that if a 3rd grader fails a standardized reading test, they will be forced to repeat the grade unless they attend a summer program and agree to tutoring. Tennessee joins 17 other states with similar reading retention policies. But parents like Sparkle say these laws do more harm than good.
But y'all are setting them up for failure, wanting to hold them back, teaching them exactly what you're teaching them there, which is nothing.
It's a controversial policy, but one that experts say has merits.
Retention is not universally harmful to students. Clearly has strong benefits for many students in the years immediately following the retention decision.
And while the pandemic has focused attention on lagging literacy, it's not a new issue. Statistics show even back in 2019, 65% of Tennessee 4th graders were not reading at grade level. The majority of those are children of color.
Not all children are receiving a quality education.
Sonia Thomas is a parent who's teaching other Nashville families how to advocate for their kids.
The state and other states around this country have failed to teach children how to read. If we don't have any other right, we have a right to be taught how to read, and that is not happening.
Sonia chose to hold her own son back a grade and feels parental involvement is crucial.
This is about partnership. This is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It shouldn't be. All children are different.
Now, across America, parents helpless that their kids will be held back. Third grade has been seen as a defining year because experts say from 0 to 3rd grade, that's when children learn to read. After that, they read to learn. So if they haven't mastered the skill by 3rd grade, learning becomes all the more difficult.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.